Emily Carter. In this episode, we're going to talk about humanity's obsession with immortality. There really are people on this planet who are dead serious about living a very long, very healthy life. For example, one of the most successful basketball players in the world, LeBron James, reportedly spends $1.5 million a year on his body. Or take Brian Johnson, a 48-year-old entrepreneur who works with more than 30 doctors and health experts to monitor every function of his body in the pursuit of returning to his 18-year-old self. His annual spend? Around $2 million. Most of us, of course, can't invest those kinds of numbers in our bodies, but many of us do try all sorts of things to live healthier and longer. Vitamin supplements, gym memberships, you name it. All of these activities have come to be called longevity for a while now. You've probably seen the term all over social media. We could even call it the modern name for humanity's relentless fight against death. So why are we so at odds with death in the first place? That's what we'll dig into today. First, let's pin down what this concept actually is. When we say longevity, we don't just mean adding years in a purely biological sense. The real emphasis is on extending the healthy span of life, a life as free as possible from disease and pain, productive and independent, stretched out as far as we can. Many scientists, to make such a standard of living possible, are trying to understand the body's biological mechanisms. It sounds like a quest demanding big answers, but aging doesn't stem from a single cause. It's the result of many small biological glitches. Telomeres, mitochondria, the epigenetic clock, the timing by which our genes switch on and off. In recent years, research has focused on dozens of these small details. For instance, Dr. David Sinclair of Harvard claims we can rewind that epigenetic clock through epigenetic reprogramming. In his view, aging can be thought of like a software error. Fix the bug, and the system runs longer. Naturally, an entire industry has grown up around this. Billions of dollars are flowing into the global longevity sector. And it's not limited to supplements, healthy diets, or PRP-type blood refresh methods. There are cryogenic freezing companies. And no, not the ice cream kind. We're talking about freezing people. There are personalized genetic therapies, AI-powered health coaches. The list of new approaches is almost endless. On top of that, you have people like Elon Musk working on transferring human consciousness into digital environments. But none of this is a brand new concern. Humanity's desire for immortality and extended life is older than we think. Consider mythology. From our earliest stories, the gods are immortal, right? In the Middle Ages, there was the philosopher's stone, believed to grant immortality, and many alchemists sought it. Today, scientists and genetic engineers are on a similar quest. In a way, they've brought Qin Shi Huang's search for immortality right into the laboratory. And since we mentioned him, let me tell you that ancient tale. Qin Shi Huang, founder of China's imperial dynasty and its first emperor, lived around the 200s BCE. He conquered every state that fought his realm, amassing such power that China's borders reached vast dimensions. The construction of the majestic Great Wall, which has endured for centuries, began by his command. For such a mighty emperor, an insatiable appetite for life was no surprise. With every victory, his obsession with immortality grew. In his view, a ruler ought to be immortal. To that end, he gathered all the alchemists in his land to the palace. He didn't stop there. He sent envoys to the peaks of sacred mountains and gave chemists access to all the resources of the state. All in pursuit of a single goal, the Elixir of Life, the draught that would grant immortality to whoever drank it. Qin Shi Huang spent a fortune on this. His alchemists tried everything. Many historians even say that this quest brought about his end. Some alchemists prepared mercury-laced elixirs for him, meaning the emperor was ingesting poison in small doses each time. In the end, death came knocking. At just 49 years old, while searching for the Elixir of Life, Qin Shi Huang found himself face to face with the very thing he'd tried to outrun. There's a strange paradox here, isn't there? In trying to defeat death, one can end up hastening it, running toward the finale while trying to escape it. They say there's no cure for death, but there are those who argue the exact opposite. Just as scientists working on longevity do, some philosophers claim we'll reach immortality at some point. A good example is the philosopher Nick Bostrom, also known for the simulation theory, and his 2005 allegory, The Fable of the Dragon Tyrant. In it, Bostrom depicts death as a dragon. Over time, people get used to this dragon that devours thousands every day. It becomes part of the flow of life. In a way, they choose to remain indifferent to it. But of course, ignoring a giant dragon isn't so easy. Some people decide to defeat it. They begin working on a weapon powerful enough to pierce the dragon's armor. While some argue that being swallowed by the dragon is simply part of being human. After 12 years, they develop that weapon. And following long moral debates, they slay the tyrant. In this allegory, Bostrom argues that humanity will one day conquer death. For him, the weapon that pierces the dragon's armor is technology. If we advance far enough, he says, we can even bend the flow of time. But that invites a philosophical pushback. For example, Leon Kass, in his 2001 essay Why Not Immortality, argues against this pursuit. In his view, death is what makes life meaningful. If we were to live forever, life would lose its excitement, achieve our greatest desire, and we risk desiring nothing ever again. When you think about it, both approaches have a certain logic, don't they? Looking at our evolutionary history, we've become beings who live longer as technology advances. Where humans exist, there's always forward motion, and along that path, we're always seeking meaning. Yet at the end of that search, perhaps everything could lose its meaning. It's an irritating paradox, I know. So, why do we still chase immortality despite that? What's our core motivation? Yes. Why do we seek immortality? What's driving us? That's what we said we'd discuss, right? Let's not waste time and look at the psychology of it. In his 1973 book, The Denial of Death, anthropologist Ernest Becker claims that fear of death lies at the root of all human cultural activity. To push it back, we make art, produce science, build empires. He even says we have children partly for this reason. Deep down, humans want the same thing, to deny death, to leave a trace to say, I'm gone, but my work lives on. Becker sums up our species like this. Man is an animal who tries to achieve immortality through symbols. So, there's a biological version of immortality and a symbolic one. We either want our bodies to continue or our ideas, which means the source of our quest isn't merely to exist physically. The deeper aim isn't so much to exist, but not to disappear. Building on Becker's ideas, 3 psychologists, Jeff Greenberg, Sheldon Solomon, and Tom Pisacinski, developed what's called terror management theory in the 1980s. According to this theory, when thoughts of death rise to the surface of consciousness, people cling more tightly to their cultural identities, beliefs, and values. They explain it like this. In the background, the human mind constantly runs a death anxiety process, what they call mortality salience. To manage that salience, we take refuge in religious beliefs, national identities, or artistic and scientific production. Our cultural identity fuses with our awareness of death. Culture doesn't just shape our lifestyle, it also functions as a shield against our fear of death. The theory suggests that whenever we feel that fear, we become more dogmatic, more rigid in defending our own views, because the moment we sense our mortality, we feel the need to hold on to something. So, our relationship with death is also shaped by culture. And of course, culture in itself has no single fixed definition. There are very different cultures across the world, right? Just as food, music, and social life differ, so does the way people relate to death. If that's the case, let's compare how different cultures approach death and immortality. Our first stop is Mexico. Every year, at the beginning of November, Mexico's streets come alive with a colorful festival. Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. People pour into the streets wearing vibrant clothes and skeletal makeup. They set up altars in memory of departed loved ones and share their favorite foods and drinks. Large crowds sing together in the streets. The roots of this tradition go back to Aztec ceremonies dedicated to the goddess Mictlantecuhtli, later blending with Catholic beliefs in the colonial era to become what it is today. In other words, it carries traces of both indigenous and Western cultures. The philosophy here is clear. Death isn't something to fear, but a part of life's continuity. More importantly, the dead aren't entirely gone. In Mexico, they live on, in the streets, at feasts, in rituals, among those who remember them. In Western cultures, death often arrives with darkness or mourning. In Mexico, it's something to celebrate. For them, the end of life isn't annihilation. At the very least, they defy death this way. In other words, it carries traces of both indigenous and Western cultures. Our second stop is across the Pacific, Japan. In Japanese culture, the concept of death has deep significance. The dead are seen as part of ancestor veneration. Every September, the Obon festival brings people together to honor the spirits of departed ancestors. Families decorate photos of lost relatives at home, visit graves, and join large processions to perform traditional dances. In Buddhist belief, the spirits of the dead return to the world during this period, creating a temporary bridge between the living and the dead. As in Mexico, in Japan too, death symbolizes continuity, not rupture. The spiritual presence of ancestors helps shape the identity of the living. People there don't fear death so much as they accept it as an extension of social bonds. We've visited Asia and South America. Now let's stop in the middle of the map. 19th century England. Those years, especially the Victorian era, were a time when death was extraordinarily visible in England. Industrialization had crowded the cities, and epidemics rose. Death was no longer a sudden visitor. It had become part of daily life. People turned to art to cope with it. Their refuge was memento mori photography. In this practice, families took a final photograph of deceased loved ones, keeping the person's spirit alive in pictures. Victorians reminded themselves of death at every opportunity. Some even placed locks of a loved one's hair inside jewelry. Mourning became a fashion, even a way of life. Black clothing, years-long mourning rules, and more. I know, it may sound strange at first, perhaps even a bit masochistic, but the aim was to domesticate death's frightening face, to make it part of life. Yes, death was inevitable, but what if we could beautify it? Could we make peace with it then? These differences tell us something. Death may be universal, but the meaning we assign to it never is. And perhaps, the very reason we chase immortality lies beneath this, the fact that death can be interpreted in so many different ways. Even so, we have to acknowledge one thing. Death is part of the cycle of life. For some, it's an ending. For others, a new beginning. But ultimately, it's something everyone must face. Don't be disheartened. It's not only our problem, it's the universe's as well. As astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson says in a StarTalk video, entropy limits immortality. On Earth, chasing immortality isn't just an individual struggle. It's also a thermodynamic one. But who knows, maybe philosophers like Bostrom or genetic engineers will be proven right in this relentless quest, and someday we'll find a technological fix. I know. It's a peculiar feeling to live while already knowing the ending of the story. But that doesn't mean we should lose heart. As Ernest Becker puts it, what makes us immortal is the trace we leave while we live. That trace could be a work of art you create, or the gentle smile you leave on someone's face. So no, I'm not saying longevity is a sham. I would never suggest you ignore your health. I'm simply saying, don't do it to live forever. Do it to savor each moment more fully and more healthily. Here's to a life that's long, healthy, and above all meaningful with the people you love.